Welcome to the KPIs of a successful orthodontic practice. And of course, first and foremost, KPIs stand for Key Performance Indicators of a successful orthodontic practice. I'm Amy Morgan. I'm the CEO at Pride Institute, and I've been a consultant trainer in the dental industry for 22 years at Pride and 11 years prior to Pride, and it is a privilege to work with residents who are getting ready for a successful transition into the professional practice of orthodontics, because starting off right is the key to success in the first 5 years, the next 10 years, and all the way through to a successful exit and a transition into your practice. And there's no better place to start than looking at statistical interpretations of an orthodontic practice's success. And of course, this is a G-Care Dentsply sponsored clinical education program, and the goal is to make sure that as you take that first step into professional life, be it a associate position, be it a practice startup or a practice purchase, that you feel armed and dangerous and educated enough to be able to choose your experts wisely, make good decisions, and maximize for the best return on investment. So let's get rocking and rolling. The first thing is, and it's amazing to me as a business consultant and a financial planner by training, the small business owner, AKA the dentist, the orthodontist, anyone in our dental community, as you begin to move into small business, there is a wonderful book called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And the E-Myth talks about the myth of small business, the myth of that small business entrepreneur, and more importantly, the fatal assumption that that entrepreneur makes. And let me share that with you. The fatal assumption being, if you understand the technical work of a business, then you're going to understand that business that does that technical work. Now, what the heck does that mean? What that means let's use a baker, baking as an example. If you're an excellent baker, if you've been working part-time at a local bakery and everybody loves your morning muffins, and everybody says, my gosh, you should become a baker, and you one night have what Michael Gerber refers to as the entrepreneurial seizure, and you go, yeah, I can do this. I'm going to open up my own bakery. I'm going to get a small business loan, and life's going to be really, really, really good. The fatal assumption is 2 weeks before opening that bakery, that baker is probably working on the next best recipe. Should I use better blueberries? Should I bake more pies? Is there a cookie recipe that exceeds my chocolate chip recipe? A business person 2 weeks before opening would be working on their marketing strategy, their hiring protocols, their training protocols. So the fatal assumption is, just because you're graduating your residency as an excellent orthodontist does not mean you're going to run an excellent orthodontic practice. And that's really important to understand because, again, look at your schooling up to now. How much time has been spent on being able to read a spreadsheet? How much time has been spent on hiring protocols and training protocols? Congratulations, you're part of the myth. And it goes a little bit farther. According to Michael Gerber, there are 3 distinct hats a orthodontist as owner or even as an associate, because an associate has an inherent leadership position because you have to inspire your patients and your parents, and you have to inspire your team to want to support you. So either as an associate or a practice owner, it is absolutely essential to be able to juggle 3 specific hats as that small business owner. That first hat being the entrepreneur. And the definition of an entrepreneur is the visionary, the dreamer, the one who's always thinking of the future. An entrepreneur is not interested in the details of the day The entrepreneur is interested in the challenge of tomorrow. And with that said, is if the entrepreneur was opening up a brand new bake shop, the entrepreneur wouldn't be worried about what's going to be offered as the cookies of today. They'll be researching the latest and greatest, opportunities for 6 months from now, and always looking for the goals in the future. When you think about inspiration, when you think about passion, when you think about creativity and excitement, those are all those kinds of things you would expect an entrepreneur to bring to the party. The next hat that's absolutely essential to wear is the manager. And the manager, by definition, if you take apart the word manager, it's derived from the French word man, which is hands. And the manager, by that definition, has his or her hands on the systems of the practice, the team management aspects, the patient management aspects, hands on. They're the pragmatists. They're the planners. If you're having a performance evaluation with your team, congratulations, you're a manager. If you are reviewing the numbers, congratulations, you're a manager. If you're setting up what your scheduling systems, your financial arrangement systems are, you are functioning as a manager. And because the manager is based upon predictability and organization, the manager is taking its call from systems and protocols of the past. So already you can see that there is an interesting dichotomy between being able to function as the entrepreneur visionary and the manager pragmatist and be able to balance that out. Now, the very good news is because you are all residents, you are going to feel very comfortable with the third hat, which is the technician, aka the clinician. And the clinician is that very good baker or that very good orthodontist who feels very comfortable with actually doing the case, not necessarily managing the patient who's getting that case or managing the team that's supporting that case or managing the systems that makes that case efficient and effective. So the technician, by definition, is the doer. If I gave you a pop quiz and said, when you open up your first practice, where's your preference? Do you want to be doing a staff meeting? Do you want to be analyzing the statistical interpretation of success? Do you want to be setting visions and goals for next year? Or do you want to be in the operatory, doing a case? If you say, I want to be in the operatory, congratulations, you're being the technician. And the biggest mistake that we see in practice management is many, many orthodontists try to solve all of their problems in the operatory versus becoming very comfortable in all three roles. And our goal over these webinars is to make sure that you can function in all three. So now that we know that, the entrepreneurial model, and the entrepreneur, by the way, definition of an entrepreneur is one who takes risks for an expected reward. It's the risk taker. And unfortunately, the personality profiles that are most attracted to a career in dentistry are those that are not necessarily the risk takers, the dreamers. You're not necessarily the possibility thinkers. You're the probability thinkers. And with that said, if you are actually going to take the risk of opening up a practice, you need to understand the model. And the model being, it has less to do what's done in the business and more to do with how it's done. The commodity, the wonderful case, the case completion is not necessarily what's important. You already know that patients don't necessarily know the quality of the clinical care that you deliver. They know the quality of the experience. And so it's absolutely essential that as you make this transition that you begin to think about What type of service are we going to provide? What kind of culture are we going to have? What kind of staff training are we going to participate in? What kind of relationships with the referral community so that I can then function as the role of technician and clinician and actually do what it is that I've been trained to do. And that is the rub. To begin to help you on your road, let's think like the entrepreneur and manager. Now, the entrepreneur creates SMART goals that promote the vision. And by definition of vision, we're talking about a compelling magnetic picture of a future that's so bright that you want to wear shades. And the vision is the end point, the point B that you're driving toward. So the goals are how you're going to get there. Because if you think about a vision, it's all very well and good to say, I want to be the best orthodontic practice. I want to deliver excellence. I want people to love me and become raving fans. I want my referral community to refer to me first and foremost. That's the vision. The goal is, what are the steps? What's the roadmap that we're going to need to take in order to make that vision a reality? And I think that most of you have very clear visions of what you'd like it to look like, but not necessarily the A to B steps that's going to be needed to be taken in order to make that vision a reality. So why create positive goals? First and foremost, you create positive goals to make your vision happen. That's what we were just talking about. Goals are very important because they provide direction and focus. For those of you who feel that sharing goals with team are going to make you seem production-driven or numbers-driven, you're sadly mistaken. I want you to consider you and your team to be marathon runners. And a marathon runner is only as good as being able to pace themselves in order to be able to get to the finish line. And if you don't know where the finish line is, you don't know whether you're running ahead of schedule, behind schedule. So it's very important to provide focus. Goals also clarify everyone's role. And what I mean by that is that, if you don't say to an appointment coordinator, this is your goal for an effective scheduling template, the only way they're going to know whether they're doing a good job or not is by perception or judgment, which is 99.999% always wrong. So that's an important point. What we also see goals do is they give the team something to strive for. It recognizes and celebrates success, and it's an objective means of evaluation. If the only thing you can say to your first staff member is, I want you to work hard, then you're not really creating a staff members that's going to strive to new levels of performance. We also know that year in, year out, day in, day out, if there's not celebration or acknowledgement of the steps taken to promote success, people burn out really easily. So we're looking for that objective means of evaluation. If you go into a startup and you don't know your 6-month marker, what would be the estimate goals for case starts, for production, for collections, for new patient case acceptance, the only way you're going to be able to define your success is through qualitative experiences like, is there somebody in my next appointment? And that never, ever, ever works. So the definition of SMART goals is very, very important to understand, because SMART, it's an acronym that stands for something specifically. And keeping in mind that there are SMART goals, there are also not so SMART goals. And we're going to define what that is so that you can begin to create those goals that will give you the future that you truly want. So as we begin to look at SMART, let's take the word apart and look what are the components of effective and SMART goals. First and foremost, a goal to be SMART must be very specific. Not like I want to produce oodles of case starts. Not I'd like to be able to collect enough money to be in the lifestyles of the rich and famous. A specific goal is something like, we're going to reduce cancellations by 5%. Not, I want to make all my patients happy, and if they're happy, they're going to show up. So the more specific the goal is, the better off you're going to be. Keeping that in mind, a SMART goal is also measurable. And what I mean by measurable is generalities and qualitative responses don't give you the ability to be able to analyze what level of success you're really at. So for example, numbers and benchmarks and standards, not judgments. Judgments are things like, I feel like we should be getting more referrals from our referring community. I feel like we should be more productive in the 6th month. We want to know, statistically speaking, what is it that's actually going on, because judgments can be wrong, statistics never lie. The A part of SMART is then attainable. And what I mean by this is there's a delicate balance between a dreamer and a hallucination. You know, a hallucination is, I want to do $1 kajillion by next week, but I have no way or method to be able to achieve it. So although we want you to dare to dream, we want it to be X amount of case starts per day, not I want to make $3 billion by next Tuesday. The next part of the SMART goal is relevant. And by relevant, you know, people get very interested in what their neighbors are doing. You know, my dad was an orthodontist and he had X amount of case starts by his 3rd year. That may not work for you. Your goals must be your goals. Although it's nice to know if you're keeping up with the Joneses, your goals need to be customized to your vision and strategy. Are you doing more adult case starts? Are you doing phase 1, phase 2? Not just because, and that will help. And finally, once you have the S, M, A, and R, the final part of a SMART goal is trackable. You have to actually monitor these puppies. You have to inspect what you expect. If you wait once a year to see if you're crossing the finish line, then you're waiting way too long. Now, again, I know that the fear is too many statistics can make you feel statistically driven versus the service provider that all of you desire, aspire, and perspire to be. But the fact of the matter is that if you don't know that you are hitting your benchmarks, then scarcity can easily come into place, and scheduling can be like eating dessert. And what I mean by that is no matter how full you are, there's always room to stuff one more brownie in, just like it always feels like there's room to stuff one more case start in, because you don't know when enough is enough. So part of what we're teaching here, as you are looking at the key performance indicators of a practice, is KPIs must be SMART. Now, classically, there's a whole bunch of statistical interpretation of success. But whether you're going into an associateship as your first phase of a career move, or you're going directly into a practice purchase, a partnership, or a startup, there are some basic statistical interpretations of success that is going to be essential for you to be able to track from the moment forward. The statistical interpretations of success are what we look for to monitor when a practice is in the growth phase. And the growth phase is during that initial phase of startup, purchase, or getting your sea legs. That's very important. These are your basic trend indicators. And the trend indicators, and by trend what we mean is no one number means anything by itself. It requires you to have a goal, an actual, and more importantly, look at it from a year-to-date cumulative point of view, so you don't have the experience of feeling like I'm not doing well because you had a bad month, but you're doing great for the year. So it's important to look at all your SMART goals and statistics based upon a trend. And some of the things we're looking at is, of course, it's important to look at total office production, doctor production per day, possibly per hour. Phase 1 starts, phase 2 starts, so that you can keep a pipeline going. Your collection in dollar value, your collection in percentage, credit adjustment percentage being those adjustments you make against productivity because of VIP discounts, insurance write-offs, pay in full discounts, insurance write-offs, accounts receivable ratio being the total monies owed against your productivity, accounts receivable over 90 days being total monies owed over 90 days. And as an orthodontist, you're going to see 50 to 60% of that over 90 days because 90% of your patients will be on pay arrangements. That will be anywhere from 12 to 24 months in length. Total number of new patients, number of inquiries over scheduled first appointment, case acceptance rate, which is of the amount of treatment that has been diagnosed, how much has been said yes to with a financial arrangement in writing and first appointment scheduled, which is very important. Now, you never go for 100%. That's 85% because we do want you to not diagnose the patient or the parent's pocketbook. We want you to diagnose ideal orthodontic care based upon their needs, IQ level, and trust level. And then, of course, number of patients in active care. And that's a great way to start monitoring something. For those of you who are getting ready to do due diligence and are looking at a practice to associate in or a practice to purchase, very, very specifically, bottom line, these are the numbers that you can and should be interfacing with so that you have some kind of idea of your potential as you begin to segue into that practice. As you start to look at this, I consider this slide to be the secret of the universe page because I want you to, if you understand this particular slide, you're going to feel well equipped to make some very difficult and challenging and courageous decision over the entirety of your career as an orthodontist. And I don't think that I'm overselling this. We call this page or slide the entrepreneurial spine. And it's because I want you to consider yourself as a potential business owner to be, as the entrepreneur and manager of your business, a business chiropractor. And I want you to consider that if you're doing due diligence on a practice, you're basically taking a full body x-ray of that practice, and you are looking to make sure that all the vertebrae are in alignment. And as we are aligning the KPIs, the key performance indicators, they need to line up to the spine. Now, before we get to the spine, I do need to point out that before you can have a spine, you need a head and neck of the practice. And the head and neck of a practice is your vision, AKA your brand, if we're going to talk about it in marketing terms. The vision of your practice is the compelling magnetic future that is way beyond what you have right now that you really, really, really want. It needs to be compelling to you. It needs to be compelling to your team to be. It needs to be compelling to potential patients and parents, and it needs to be compelling to your referral community. So it has to be a noble and worthy point B to drive towards. Now, in marketing terms, that vision can become what's called your brand promise, your brand identity. And your brand is the promise that you make to your community that you intend to never, ever, ever break. Branding is incredibly important as a step zero to practice health and well-being, and we're going to get a little bit into that in just a few slides going down. Once you know what your vision and brand is, then and only then can you set your first vertebrae. And your first vertebrae, as we discussed, are your goal-setting mechanisms. Thou shalt not set a goal that doesn't intimately support and promote your vision and brand. And with that said, there's two types of goals that we're going to be setting here. We have what's called active goals, which is black and white tangible results, easily statistically interpreted, just like we talked about in SMART goal setting. And the 80-20 rule applies here. 80% of all your strategic goals can and must be active, black and white, tangible results. Now, with that said, I will say about 20% of a goal in any strategy is going to be what we call passive goals, quality of life goals, things like high team morale, things like a great, a warm and caring practice culture. Now, there's no way you can statistically interpret that only 72% of your staff have high morale. So it does take a little bit of innovation to figure out how to statistically interpret that, but your goals must intimately support and promote your vision. That's the first point of alignment. Once you have your active and passive goals, then you can statistically interpret success, and the final vertebrae, the anchor vertebrae to your entrepreneurial spine, is you create your operating systems. And by operating systems, I mean scheduling, marketing, treatment presentation, financial arrangements, your continuing care on your phase 2 or your pipeline of delayed treatment points. You design your systems to achieve your goals, to accomplish your systems. And that means, do I purchase OrthoTrack, Tops, or Dolphin? Do I extend my financial arrangements to external opportunities first or internal? All of those questions get answered per your spine and adapt to your spine. And then the final most important vertebrae is, as you begin to hire a staff, you design the team job descriptions to accomplish your systems, to achieve your goals, to accomplish your vision. So, do I need to hire a front office person with experience? Is it more important to have clinical skills for my assistants or customer service skills? Those questions can only be answered when you begin to run up and down your spine. And this is an important thing to remember, because when your vertebrae are out of alignment, it hurts just as much when your spine is out of alignment. So this is how we're going to begin to approach your KPIs. Now, this is my favorite quote about the connection between the vision, goals, and strategy. And it's a 3-line quote, and I want you to remember it. It starts with this: a task without a vision is drudgery. So as you begin to inspire yourself, your patients, your referring community, and your team, anything that feels like a drudgery is missing that compelling magnetic future outcome that is so desirable to all. So you can't have passion, you can't have influence, you cannot have inspiration without the vision. Now, I'm not talking a fluffy, I want to help all the little children of the world. It needs to be a vision with teeth in it in order to work. So anything that feels like a drudgery, I guarantee you is missing vision. However, look at the second line. The second line is, a vision without a task is but a dream. And that's like the New Year's resolution. I want to lose 25 pounds, but first I want to eat this pizza and this ice cream. If you have a noble vision of a future, then you need to have the goals and the strategies lined up so that it's not an empty promise, because the third line is what's going to make you successful in practice. And that third line is, a vision with a task is the action and the hope of the world. So as you begin to write your business plan or do whatever it is that you're going to be doing as your next phase of transition, keep in mind that both sides of the fence are incredibly essential for you to get the return on investment that you deserve and desire. So now that we know this, just a little bit of help. If we're not going to be able to write your vision here, I do want to help you a little bit with your brand promise and your branding process. And that means that you need 3 practice management tools to hit the ground running. Your vision statement, which defines the long-term aspirations. Your mission statement, which defines in global ways the strategy, how you're going to approach your vision. And although I cannot give you templates immediately for that, the third essential practice management tool is your brand identity / brand promise statement, which is going to very specifically and succinctly cover what it is that you intend to do to serve who you're going to serve, and the positive difference that you intend to make. Now, it's not an advertising slogan like a world's best cup of coffee. In fact, I'm giving you a little Mad Libs of an anatomy of a brand identity statement. Feel free to craft your own as you begin to look at your next step as a professional. And the Mad Lib goes like this: your name promises a specific targeted market that they can count on you for some kind of unique attribute, selling proposition, or benefit. It's called USP in marketing terms, your unique selling proposition. And your brand identity means how are you going to deliver that? And to give you an example of what a orthodontic brand promise can sound like, and this is actually a brand identity statement that I did for a practice startup that I've been working with over the past year. And it goes something like this: the Center for Orthodontic Excellence promises our teen and adult patients who desire the best dental care and results possible that they can count on us to deliver state-of-the-art orthodontic care that exceeds expectations. And this care will always be delivered with warmth, collaboration, and a spirit of fun. And this has to be as customized, non-cookie cutter like as the unique snowflakes that you intend to be. If I had a nickel for every brand statement that said you're a quality orthodontic practice here to deliver excellence, I'd be retired. So this does have to begin to establish your personality. Once you have at least a brand identity statement, we can begin to look at the more specific goals and statistical interpretation of success. And the ones you're going to be most interested in are the cash flow management definitions, because we all know that you're graduating with debt that would give cardiac arrest to a moose. And it's important to know that you're going to be able to hit the ground running and be able to have a clear idea of when you're going to begin to justify that investment and begin to flourish as a result. So there's some cash flow management definitions I want to give you first so that you understand it. The first definition is what we call a break-even point. And a break-even point sounds exactly like it is. It's when you're talking about cash flow management, it's a dog paddle. You aren't necessarily moving towards your vision, but you're not necessarily drowning other. It's at what point am I able to pay the bills without going into arrears, and I'm at least whole. And it's very important for an entrepreneur to know that break-even point so that they can strive to get there and not live life in a scarcity. And that's just the step zero. The more important piece is the more global cash flow projections. And for those of you who will be going to the bank for loans, and I have a template for you to follow, the first cash flow projection that you're going to be dealing with is your business plan. And it's going to be a projection of a ghost of Christmas future. It hasn't happened yet, based upon a whole bunch of history, a little bit of rationale, and a lot of wing and a prayer. The business plan for the bank is going to be a little bit more rose-colored glass like. We always recommend a little bit more down-to-earth business plan cash flow projection internally so that you are prepared with the appropriate working capital and the appropriate revenue streams so that you're not caught a day late and a dollar short. So your first cash flow projection is going to be a business plan. Many of the business plans are based upon 1 year, 5 year, 10-year, and 20-year increments. In orthodontics, the 1 year works the best because it allows for a specific ramp-up period without getting you so out there that you really can't see the forest through the trees. So once you get past your initial startup, you're going to be looking at it from the future outcomes that I would like to achieve and the strategy to achieve it, and it's based upon a reality of where I am today and the vision for the future strategy. The most important cash flow projection, which again is Christmas, secret of the universe number 2, is a annual planning process, which is a 1 year projection only based upon a Christmas wish list ideal budget, not what you need to spend, what you want to spend, which is a much more proactive approach than just hoping there's something on the bottom line when you're done for the day. And it's also a Christmas wish list schedule, because working smarter is the mandate, not working harder. And this is a annual plan is an interesting point, because if anybody's ever gone to a financial planners do what's called front door forecasting. They project a production and collection goal based upon if you did $1 million last year, let's assume you can go up by 3%. I'm going to show you a very simple annual plan that backs into production, collection, and case starts goals based upon the wish list we were talking about. And that's an important piece to know. It's the freestyle swim. You are definitely getting motion in your ocean when you're doing an annual plan. And as we start to look at this, a word about reforecasting. Once you set an annual plan, this is a very important rule. Never, ever, ever change the goal. Once you've set it, change your strategy to achieve the goal. There is nothing worse, no more burnout producing than continuously moving the finish line. If you are below goal, you can have a bronze and silver level to achieve, but you have to honor the original gold medal. If you're ahead of goal, it doesn't mean that you stop. But if this is a wish list, if this is abundance, it's important to honor and respect the goals. If you don't, your team will never respect the goals either. So now that we know the definitions, we're going to back into an annual plan by looking at the expenses. If you have ever been exposed to a profit and loss statement, I do want to explain that a profit and loss statement, though it will have a role in your practice success, it's not the role that you think. And if you have ever seen one and you've had trouble reading it, understanding it, or knowing what it means, congratulations. There's a long line of you feeling the same way, because a profit and loss statement has a very different need or desire or outcome than a classic cash flow document, which we call the operating statement. So let's take a look at it. First and foremost, the profit and loss statement is its primary duty is that of a tax document. When you go to look at an office, you are looking at as a potential purchase. Understand you're looking at their financial statements, which includes a profit and loss statement, and that financial statement isn't necessarily giving you the whole picture of health of a practice, because it is designed to be first and foremost a tax document. And it doesn't matter whether you come from a blue state or red state, anyone will tell you a true capitalist business man is going to want to, or woman is going to want to pay the least amount of tax possible. So the elements of a tax document is to make sure you are paying the least amount of tax on profit. A operating statement is a cash flow document, which means we're going to let the cash flow as it is without worries about whether we're going to be taxed on it or not. More specifically, when you read a profit and loss statement, you are going to see the word income, revenue, or collections on the very top. If you see percentages, it will all be to that income and collections, because Uncle Sam taxes you on revenue, and therefore you are looking at your expenses from that viewpoint. However, the fact of the matter is your expenses are generated when you produce something. You don't need to buy self-ligating brackets. You don't need to get a clear aligner if you are not actually delivering those brackets, or you don't need an assistant if there's nothing to assist. You don't use rubber gloves if you're not opening up anybody's mouth. So if we're looking at your expenses from an internal cash flow efficiency, we're always going to look at it from the viewpoint of what you produce, and we mean your full fee, usual, customary, and reasonable, not an adjusted insurance fee. And that's an important point to know. Number 3, on the profit and loss statement, you're going to see crazy little words like depreciation, amortization. And it's not that they're false words or illegal or criminal. Something like depreciation is a tool that the government invented during the last depression to get entrepreneurs, small business owners to invest back into their business, which means you get a tax benefit every time you buy a digital x-ray or a new chair. Now, you will see on a profit and loss statement a negative something coming out called depreciation. And you will never in your career write a check to somebody named Frederick Depreciation, so you would never see that on a cash flow document because that immediately skews what's actually in your bank account and what you can actually take home and call compensation. So no depreciation, no amortization. In fact, it's the whole truth and nothing but the truth. This is an important thing, especially as you transition into life as a professional. When you see loans and leases on a profit and loss statement, the only thing you're going to see is the interest part of that payment, because to the IRS, if you are buying new office equipment or you are buying chairs or you are doing leasehold improvements, the principal payments that you pay are considered to be owner's equity. And there is the assumption that someday you may get that equity out of the practice, so you are taxed on it. So if your first practice loan is $5,000 a month, principal plus interest, the only thing that's going to show up on your P&L is the $1,500 worth of interest, which once again means if you look to your bank account to see what money you have to spend at home, you're not going to see it there. On a cash flow document, you will see the whole enchilada, principal plus interest, which means you now know what it really takes from a cash flow point of view to run your practice. Creativity is allowed on your profit and loss statement. And what I mean by that, depending upon how aggressive your tax accountant is, if you can figure out how to depreciate your dog, drive a large, dental supply called a BMW, or whisper the word marketing, once a year in your condo in Hawaii and take it as a marketing expense, go for it. I mean, that's between you and your tax management. But on a operating statement, you want to see the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So if you've got your 6-month-old on the payroll so that you can fund a Roth IRA for future college, that's good for you, but we really need to know what your true payroll is. And this is an important thing for you to be aware of as you begin to do your due diligence as an associate or a practice owner, is to make sure you're seeing the true expenses. The bottom line is the true purpose of a profit and loss statement is to show the least amount of profit possible so that you are not paying taxes on it, which means if there is a bracket around the final number on the P&L, that's cause for celebration. If the operating statement or cash flow document is to show the true profitability of a practice, if there's a bracket there, it means that practice is going bankrupt. So there is a role for a P&L. There is a role for a cash flow document. One is an internal document. One is an external document, and you need to have a heightened awareness of both. What you're seeing on the screen now is a much deeper, broader operating statement. And notice it's going to be much longer than a P&L. A P&L is usually about 2 pages long max. A cash flow document is going to be much more specific in its detail, much more able for you to look at different profit centers. It's going to be showing you both your month and your year to date, as well as you see here, when you see production UCR percentage, adjusted percentage, it's showing your expenses as they relate to productivity. And that's an important thing to be aware of. The first part of an operating statement is going to have what we call major expenses. And major expenses, by definition, all lumped together. Very specifically, if once a month you bake a really excellent chocolate production and collection cake, major expenses are the biggest slices out of your cake. It's directly related to operating an orthodontic practice, and it's big slices. Very, very simple. And of course, the very first and most major expense you're going to see, because you're a human service organization and your greatest asset is your staff, is your employee expense first and foremost. Your lab expense is also considered to be a major, your facility, your dental supplies, and your promotional expense. And in just a second, I'm going to share some KPI range norms on this so you can know if you're keeping up with the Joneses. Okay? Your next expense category is what we call the minor expenses. And minor expenses are also operational, but notice how long the minor expense categories are. These are little crumbs that add up to a significant slice. Your major and minor expenses are your direct operational costs that it takes to run an orthodontic practice. And once you know that, there's another category, and if you're an artist and you are taking notes, I want you to draw a skull and crossbones on this one, because this is where the entrepreneur gets into the biggest trouble. Discretionary expense is exactly what it means. It's owner's choice, discretion. This is office related, but how you buy it, why you buy it, and when you pay it back is strictly owner's choice. So how am I paying for equipment? How am I paying back my loan? Am I bringing on an associate? Am I bringing on a consultant? These are not necessarily necessary to start an orthodontic case, but it's essential. And if you're paying it back on a 5-year, 7-year loan, or if you're trying to pay in cash, it will impact your cash flow. And you'll be very excited to see the final category being what you have been striving for from the beginning. It's owner's compensation, also known, if you see here, EBOC stands for earnings before owner's compensation, which breaks out into what we call non-cash compensation, which is what the practice pays directly for that benefits the owner. So if you are getting your medical through the practice, if you are getting your payroll taxes or a pension paid through the practice, congratulations, you have non-cash compensation. And cash compensation is the actual draw or bonus. Now, so that you can feel like you're keeping up with the Joneses, I do want to share the range norms for orthodontic practices. Now, the country's a very big country, and when you look at this, the range norms change depending upon the region that you're in and do need to be customized to your goals and strategies. Remember, these percentages coming out of the chocolate production collection cake is to production. But to give you an idea of what you can expect from a due diligence point of view, the very big range norm for employee expense is anywhere to 22 to 38% of your cake. The closer you are to big cities, the higher that percentage is going to go. The midline is definitely 25%. Your lab, depending upon whether you're doing lots of clear aligners or work with labs, is going to be anywhere from 0 to 5% of productivity. Facilities, rent or mortgage, custodial, anything that has to do with the facility, 5 to 7%. Ortho supplies, 5 to 7%. Promotions, especially in a growth practice, is going to be on the higher end. That's your website, that's your search engine optimization, that's referral gifts, that's newsletters, it's thank you gifts, it's everything that you're doing, and that's about 30 to 5%. And then minors are about 10 to 12. And as I say, the majors to the minors are your direct operational costs. When we get to discretionary expense, for you to get the return on investment that you deserve, discretionary expense must be less than 10% of your productivity. With that said, when you have your first entrepreneurial seizure and you purchase your practice, or you bring on an associate, or you invest in the cone beam scanner, There will be times in your career where discretionary expense will be higher. And the only thing that that means is that expense has not returned its investment yet. If you become an associate and for a while the senior orthodontist discretionary expense is higher than 10%, all that means is that you haven't had maximum exposure and you are not yet returning that full return on investment. If you do things very, very right, owner compensation, cash and non-cash for the specialist can be anywhere. I'm going to expand this to 45 to 55% of gross production. And it's a build-up for you to do that. So it's a good thing to know as you begin to create your career. Now, how do you figure out the production percentages? We're going to do a little SAT quiz here. Is if you have an employee expense total of $15,000 a month and you are gross production producing about $50,000, your expense percentage is that you have to, divide or multiply. You have to figure this out. We're going to look at what your UCR, that's your total fee, is, or your adjustments to productivity. So just to see how this works is if you have $15,000 a month in expenses and you've got a startup and you get to $50,000 a month in production, you've got a 30% UCR percentage. $2,000 more, you get down to 29. $5,000 more, you go down to 27%. So this is how you begin to look at when your employees are delivering maximum return, is based upon the small incremental starts for productivity. Now, if you happen to be a Delta provider or a MetLife provider and you are adjusting your full fees by 20%, look at what happens to that same employee percentage. So part of the game is making sure that you are monitoring your adjustments as well, because you might be right staffed, but if you are taking a bunch of adjustments, you could still be cutting severely into your profitability. So as we wrap this up, drum roll if you please, the secret of the universe is the annual plan. And the annual plan, just to show you what it looks like, and this comes directly out of our GAC Leading the Orthodontic Team by the Numbers building blocks, is when you are doing a forecast a la a Christmas wish list, you start with your fixed expenses, those things that are dollar value that can be forecasted as a dollar value. You pretty much know no matter what you're going to do, what your employee expense is going to be, what your facility expense is going to be, promotions, minors, discretionary, and a la a Christmas wish list, your owner compensation. And in our example, this orthodontist is projecting her fixed expenses at $773,494. But wait, there's another type of expense, and we call it the variable expenses. And a variable expense is so intimately connected to your productivity that you can't tell what that dollar is going to be till we know what the productivity is, and we are backing into that. And most specifically, the variables are going to be your ortho supplies, your lab and clear aligners, and unless you're collecting 100% of what you produce, the difference between production and collections needs to be considered a variable expense as far as a forecast goes. So we have an algebraic conundrum here, okay? We are looking for 100% of some new number. 14% of that in our example is the doctor's variable expense, which means 86% of that new number is going to be the fixed cost. And when you do that, if you take the fixed expense divided by the the fixed percentage, that will be the production goal. And we always love to round up because in forecasting, zeros and fives are the prettiest. But what this doctor knows, that if I produce 900,000 and collect at 98%, because remember we had a 2% collection variance, I'm going to be able to spend the way my wish list has dictated. Then congratulations, you've got a backdoor formula. You can take it even farther by forecasting your projected work days and coming up with a daily production goal a monthly production goal, and extra credit is if you can then calculate out what your case starts need to be in order to make that. And honestly, having been in the industry for as long as I have, this is true freedom for the entrepreneur. Knowing what it is that you need to do in order to be whole and successful, and then adjusting your strategy to make it. And that is very, very important. Finally, just as a gift to you, your first step as a resident is going to be the business plan. And we have a templated business plan here for you that is designed to be a really good primer to help you set up your thoughts for both the bank and yourself. It's the first step we take in either a practice purchase or startup. As you begin to look at this, the first step is the executive summary, which is strictly just a summary of everything that you just said. It's followed by what kind of industry you're in, your market analysis, which is your overall trends, what type of people are moving in, what type of people are moving out, who you're going to serve and how you're going to serve. So the template might sound like our target community is made up of young families and white-collar workers. The industry in the area is university. The forecasted growth is X. This gives you some help. Your competitive analysis and advantage, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Your brand identity is part of your advantage, your unique selling proposition. What is the demographic analysis? How many GPs? How many pedos? Who's going to be your referrers? Are you going to offer anything special and unique? Is very important. We then have a template for your basic vision statement, your practice philosophy. There's your vision. Our vision of what our dental practice will become, your marketing plan, your website, how will you get referrals, your primary target market will be, your management systems, who are you going to use for scheduling, accounting, your practice management software, your suppliers and vendors, all of those go here, and then your staffing strategy. You know, are we going to start with X amount of staff by the end of year one? What will the first staff member be? What will they be doing and how much will we be paying them? You really will have an idea of what your future is going to look like when you actually take the time to fill this puppy out. And then, of course, there is the financial plan. And this is where we recommend, as I said, the best case scenario for the lenders and the worst case scenario for yourself. So the definition of an entrepreneurial optimist would be those who have looked at the worst possible scenario but have a plan. Your cash flow projection will be called a pro forma. It'll be done on a month-to-month basis so that you can see your growth coming in, and your accountants will be able to help you on this. It's going to be very similar to the cash flow document, and hopefully this has given you enough information to be able to take your first step in starting to conduct some due diligence as to what opportunities are out there. Be educated enough to know what you know and don't know so that you can make the right decisions that will stand you in good, successful, gunshot from now till the end of your career. I know this is a lot, but I love this quote: courage is fear holding on a minute longer. That's part of, Dr. Pride used to say, when I accepted my role as an entrepreneur, I started sleeping like a baby, which means I woke up every 2 hours wet crying for my mommy. And that's all part of the entrepreneurial point. Thomas Edison says many of life's failures are men who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. And Vince Lombardi says inches make a champion, and that's why statistical interpretation is so important. This is such a big topic. I do want you to know that this is enough to start getting you thinking, but if you have questions, please feel free to go to our website, www.prideinstitute.com. There is an Ask a Consultant tab. Let them know that you are part of the G-Care Residence Program and we can help you, because we feel that there has never been a better time, no matter what the economy is, to hit the ground running, and we want to support that. Thank you so much for attending.